Hey, Chris.
We're good. All right. Call this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. The notice of this meeting was published by the county clerk's office in compliance with all applicable laws. For attendance, Supervisor Krebs is maybe running a little bit late. Everybody else is here. We also have Supervisor Gallitz, who is choosing to attend as well. And he's welcome to sit in back there or come up to the main table as his choice. So, yep. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Toma, second by Supervisor Milliken. Any questions or concerns on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And consent agenda is approved. Our first discussion item is the Clerk of Circuit Court succession planning. So I'm going to invite Todd Scott, our Director of Human Resources, up.
So committee report in front of you. I mean, largely it explains some of the detail, as well as some of the funding things. This is going to go in front of executive committee this afternoon and request the approval to use the funding. That being said, I wanted to make this committee aware of just kind of those decisions and why we're doing it. Ultimately, this is going to be very consistent with what we've done both with the clerk of courts, the county clerk, and the treasurer's offices when we have those vacancies. As there's only one party running, whoever wins that primary is likely going to be the candidate. Therefore, we can put them in. It can serve as succession planning, which serves our citizens. This person gets trained, and so it eliminates some of those gaps. It also, if it's an internal candidate that would be elected, it would allow us to backfill that position as well. So again, serving the citizens of the county. So that's really what this is, but I wanted to bring it in front of the committee so you were aware. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer them.
All right, questions?
We've done it before, and I think it's wise to do it again.
What does that position pay?
I'm not certain what the wage is. I think what we're estimating is about $50,000 for salary and benefits for the remainder of this term until this term is over.
That's 5 months.
Correct.
Comes out to 10,000 a month.
With benefits, it's probably that. I don't know. Again, I have not done that math to be able to tell you that.
I think, will you have that ready for us for the executive committee meeting this afternoon?
I mean, I can have that, sure.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Last call? Yep, go ahead.
These strategic priorities dollars would be transferred into the clerk of court's budget for this. How much money is actually left in these strategic priorities dollars, or, what are our other thoughts to utilize these strategic priorities dollars?
Once again, that's not something that within my realm, that those monies sit within the executive office's budget, and they're used for many things. Again, I don't know that within the budget side where the dollars are at or how much is there.
But I think we make a point to replenish strategic priorities funding on a regular basis so that it can be used to fund things that are unanticipated like this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just nice, when things come forward here, to have that mapped out for us. Is that money really there? Is it being pulled from something else? Maybe that is,
So all those monies sit
Important? I don't know.
within our budget, right, that you guys will approve biannually. And then again, those dollars are there, so as needs present themselves, they come forward. Strategic priority dollars have to be approved to be spent by the executive committee.
Yeah.
So they'll come forward to the county board to say, here's how we want to use them. But I believe those dollars are at the discretion of the executive's office to say, here's how I want to position those and use those. So again, the county board will approve the dollars that sit within the budget itself.
Yeah.
The executive's office will then say, here's how I want to use them, and the executive committee would approve those as they're being used.
In 2022, the budgeted amount was 544,000. So we're talking about less than 10%. And in 2022, off the top of my head, I can't remember another time where we used it, maybe once or twice. So there's a significant balance in there. And there's in 2023, current, we were adding 75,000, it looked like. So.
Okay. Do those strategic priority dollars ever go unspent, unused,
All the time.
right?
Yeah, it's kind of a year over year rollover.
That's-
So we keep a kind of a contingency fund of sorts that we only use for things that qualify under strategic priorities. So if it is within the realm of our 6 strategic priorities, we wouldn't even propose it. But this one is clearly under the well-governed and administered county. So that's why we've done it in the past, why we brought it forward again.
And I know Supervisor Schleif and I were on the board when we did this the first time with the county clerk, and that really worked out well. So Ashley ended up winning the primary, and January 1st, she was ready to lead that department because she had spent 5 months working very closely with Brenda and learning everything that job entailed. So it really worked out well. It benefited our citizens. She didn't get in the job and then spend 5 months learning it. So, yep.
We can have Margie break it down in a spreadsheet and send that to the committee and the executive committee.
Sure.
That
Sure.
would be helpful.
Bless you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. It'd be nice to have more foundational information to make a decision. I mean, I appreciate the concept, and understand too the return on the investment that you got last
Yeah.
time doing this, but.
Well, one thing I want to say too, is it's a discussion item at public safety. You guys aren't going to make a decision on it. That'll be made at the executive committee, so.
Yeah, but our voice is heard. We get to express our concerns if we have any, and our belief that it's a good thing, which I think a lot of us recognize the benefits. You talk about return on investment. So, yep,
Okay, thank you.
yep. Okay, last call for discussion on this item. All right, then we'll move on to the next item. And so I believe Sheriff Schulteis is going to come up and present on reassignment of Canine Riker and possible funding for a new canine.
Good morning, all. Yes, so what I wanted to kind of just brief the Public Safety Committee on and kind of gauge the level of support that the committee has is on the reassignment of our current canine into our jail. And there's a couple of factors that go into this. If you don't know, we currently have a Canine Riker is his name. He is a drug dog, article searching dog, and a tracking canine right now. And the handler that was assigned to him decided to leave employment with the sheriff's office and go up to Marinette County and wanted to move up north. In essence, now we don't have a canine handler, we have a canine. And I will say that we've seen it's been a great public safety asset for our department in terms of drug interdiction and tracking, and it's a valuable public safety tool. One of the issues with Riker, and it's in the committee report, so kind of highlight it, but in this past May, Riker began suffering some medical issues. He had a pretty significant seizure. We took him to the UW-Madison Vet Clinic and did all sorts of tests on him. And they can't exactly pinpoint what the problem was, but he's on a couple of medications that have mitigated it, and we haven't had any issues since then. Before that, he would get up once in a while and stumble and fall over, and then he had this more significant seizure. But that problem has been corrected. But one of the things that we kind of contemplated internally is to prolong the service life of Riker. One of the things we could do is take him out of the day-to-day working environment on the road, of going through woods, and, being in the back of a squad car that's bouncing around, is that we could reassign him to the jail as a drug detection dog. That, in essence, would kind of do two things. It would prolong the service of Riker, probably anywhere from 3 to 7 years of service life that we could still get out of Riker. But additionally, if you, excuse me, if you're not aware of and I think I've briefed the committee on this before, maybe the past committee, about the drug problems that we've had in the jail. They've been pretty significant. In fact, that we just charged one case where they were smuggling drugs into the jail. So this would really pose a significant deterrent and have that resource available almost 24/7. That we'd want to have the canine handler be assigned to the dog to be relatively close to the city of West Bend, that they'd be able to respond to the sheriff's the jail on a routine basis. So the benefits, and I'll be very honest with you, it's not real common to have a dog in the jail in the state of Wisconsin. There's really only Milwaukee, I think, has one. And I think there's one other jurisdiction that might just be starting that program. So it is a bit progressive and not something that's typically done. But I think in this particular incident, that it really serves an opportunity to have that deterrent and to have the dog be able to serve the county a lot longer. So what I'm proposing potentially, and this is where it's more of an advisory thing at this point, but maybe putting it on your radar, is there may be a point when I come back to public safety with a resolution, requesting a resolution to use some jail assessment funds to fund either the training of the new handler, which will be a corrections officer, maybe outfitting a squad, an unmarked take-home vehicle for the dog. If you're not familiar with the jail assessment funds, that doesn't impact the tax levy at all. It's funds that are off of traffic citations. There's a $10 per citation that goes into a specific jail assessment fund, where those funds can be used for special jail projects, and this I believe would certainly qualify. The other thing I wanted to brief you on, so that would create a new vacancy in patrol for a canine, and I'm a huge advocate of having another patrol canine for the tracking and the drug interdiction. So the intent to fund that new canine would come in one of two ways, or a combination of two ways. Number one, we have a drug asset forfeiture account where it's money that's been seized through drug investigations. Once again, that's not tax levy dollars. It wouldn't impact the budget at all. And then we also had this past year, we had budgeted $7,200, $7,400, something like that, for a new drone for our detective bureau. But we did not have to purchase that drone because, if you don't recall, the Badger State Sheriff's Association awarded a public safety grant to every county in Wisconsin, and we were able to purchase the drone through that award. So I have some extra budgeted money that on paper right now is dedicated to a drone that I don't need. And what I would be seeking eventually, I think, is approval from the county, from the Public Safety Committee, to be able to use those designated funds for the not designated purpose, and then to also use the drug asset forfeiture money to supplement that. So it would have no impact on the budget for the year, and it would actually add public safety resources to our departments.
Okay, and I don't know if everybody saw the the press release that went out last week from the sheriff's department on the recent drug arrest and drugs being smuggled into our jail. I'm hoping everybody had a chance to look at that. But if not, after the meeting today, go ahead and take a look at that. Chairman Schleif, I saw your hand up with a question.
I'm just curious, how old is Riker?
Riker is, I believe, like 4 years old right now.
Oh.
I think he was about a year old when we got him,
Yeah.
and he's had 3 years, just over 3 years of service. So maybe at 4.5 years old.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, just a question regarding the drugs flowing coming in. And we took a tour of the jail. Isn't there a body scanner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that is also one level of deterrence, but it's kind of an imperfect system. It's effective, and we found items, and then we've missed items because you're looking for, if it's a hard object, the scanner picks it up really, really well. But sometimes maybe a baggie or something can be kind of interpreted as, bodily fluids and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then again, to the details of this last, these drugs that were smuggled in, the body scanner wouldn't have picked that up either, right?
No, that's why we implemented the electronic scanning of the mail. We're always trying to play catch up a little bit. So that's normally we're trying to play catch up on things, and that's an example where we saw a problem, and so now we're scanning mail so the inmates aren't getting paper mail to have it soaked in the drugs. This is much more of a proactive approach where we're trying to get ahead of it.
Thank you.
And I have a feeling if the inmates see a dog coming around the jail on a regular basis, they're going to know why that's there, and that becomes a deterrent value as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. It would spend quite a bit of time in our booking area where fresh arrests are coming in. It would spend time in our Huber area where we have a lot of traffic in and out. So yeah, I think it would send a very clear message that drugs are tolerated.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, I don't see any other questions or concerns. Does everybody agree that this seems to be a good idea? I mean, it's a discussion item, so we're not officially voting, but it's kind of good to express our consensus. And it sounds like we have a consensus. So yeah, this is a good idea we want to move forward with. So,
I would guess maybe next month I might have a request for resolution to use some of the jail forfeiture money or jail assessment money to get the correctional officer trained.
Okay. All right, looks good.
How long have we had the jail assessment, that money? How long has that fund existed?
I believe quite a while, longer.
Forever?
Yes, yeah, decades.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions. So the last item, I put on here the Public Safety Wisconsin Counties Association Steering Committee report. This will go as a committee report for the full board for the next county board meeting, but I wanted everybody to have a chance to see it ahead of time. Hopefully everybody read through it. If there's any questions, we can talk about those. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so we will go on to our first action item. And this is the resolution for the referendum to increase the county tax levy to fund the Washington County Anti-Crime Plan. So I need a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, Supervisor Toma and Supervisor Milliken is seconding it. All right. So at this point, we can go ahead and discuss this. Do we have somebody who's going to present on this?
Yeah, we can both just talk about it, I guess. I just want to draw your attention to the sheet that was handed out. There's been some updates as I've updated a number of you in the last couple of weeks in individual conversations with the sheriff and I in our initial talks with you. These numbers are, I would say, about 90% complete. And that's because of a couple of things. One, it's a fast moving project, but second, equalized value numbers and that new construction and all of that information doesn't come out until the end of this month. So there's some information that's going to continue to change between now and if you decide to send this on to the county board. But for the purposes of the document that's in front of you, I draw your attention just to a couple of things. First, at the very bottom of the sheet, the total number of positions that we are being that are being considered as part of the referendum. There's 30 and a half total. You remember, as we talked about this in recent weeks, I had noted anywhere from 25 to 35. I think that was reported in the press locally as well. So that number is about right in the middle at 30 and a half. Slight difference from what was in the initial packet. And if you kind of work your way up, you'll see a couple of other modifications. What was previously referred to as estimated labor contract and benefit impacts. We tried to clarify that because we had a number of questions about, well, what the heck does that mean? Basically, this is attraction and retention initiative for the sheriff's office staff. So I'll point to two specific examples, one in Winnebago County, two counties to the north of us, and one in Waukesha County immediately to the south of us. Both counties have given sheriff's personnel, specifically patrol, $3 an hour across the board increases. That's clearly going to have a market impact on our market analysis in our union negotiation that's happening right now. You'll remember that we had a one-year contract just for 2022, or if you weren't here, now you know we had a one-year contract for 2022. So that contract negotiation is happening now. HR I met 10 days ago, maybe less than that. So that's happening in process. Really, that's what that number boils down to. Bottom line is, from a budgeting standpoint, an increase of that nature, roughly, we're talking about approximately 10% across the board. The tax levy, net new construction cannot absorb an increase of that variety. So that's what explains that dollar amount. As you continue to work your way up, we clarified a couple of clerical type of positions. You remember that there was some conversation about what those clerical positions might look like overall. There was a number of them that were modified, but a program specialist was added back in the jail area rather than a lieutenant, rather than having more brass, if you will, or supervisory positions. The sheriff had indicated that program specialist position was very important. In addition to that, you'll notice, and this was an update since our conversations with you, the jail mental health contract was added. That was in the original packet, but I thought it was worth pointing out. This is a contract that historically, now, and I say historically, I mean, when I first came to the county, that was something that Human Services and the Sheriff's Department worked together on. Then it became a contracted situation. Now that contract is intended or anticipated, to go up relatively substantially. So we're looking at partnering again with the Human Services Department, but in any event, it's going to be a significant increase. And it's something that we're focused on trying to address just mental health in general through the referendum. So as you can see, there's a number of changes there. I think I captured all of them. I'm just gonna run up here. I think that's it. I won't reiterate everything that's in the committee report. I tried to make it as comprehensive as I possibly could, both of what was in the press as well as what we have talked about in the past. The long and short of it is there's no doubt there's been an increase in crime since the late 1980s, which is the last time we saw shift changes both in the sheriff's patrol area as well as in the jail sheriff's office. So I think it's high time we make some changes. One thing that I want to make clear to this committee, that will make clear to executive committee, and ultimately make the decision to send this to referendum for the people to decide. There are a few things that will happen regardless of whether the referendum goes through or not. And then there's a bigger list of things that will not happen. So the things that will happen, whether the referendum goes on or not, the mental health crisis teams, for lack of a better term, that's going to happen one way or another. We've indicated to you before, and have told the press that we have preliminary agreement from Senator Baldwin, who's on the Appropriations Committee, for an earmark for a one-year funding of those teams. That's 3 deputies and 3 social workers working together. In one way, shape, or form, if the referendum doesn't pass, we'll come back to this committee and ultimately to the county board to fund that. We think it's too important. The importance of having it in the referendum is it's a significant ongoing cost. We think it's a key component of the anti-crime plan. But if it weren't to pass, we think that's something that still needs to happen. Not listed directly in the anti-crime plan cost, but really an ancillary component is the take-home squads, which we've talked to you about and we've talked to the press about as well. Those really boil down to a one-time cost, a capital cost. It's not small. It's $2.5 million. So it's a significant cost. But once that's established, the ongoing cost is the same or less because we're able to keep those squad cars for over a longer period of time. In addition to that, as I just mentioned, the mental health changes in the jail have to happen one way or another. And I anticipate the Sheriff's Office retention and attraction initiatives, whether it's the contract for patrol directly, some changes in the jail, those things are going to happen one way or another as well. Our feeling is there are things that we could do immediately where we can kind of nibble away at trying to increase staffing, increase patrol minimums, do things that are related to the mental health initiatives, or we can put together a comprehensive anti-crime plan and let the public really take a crack at through referendum process whether or not they want to see that. I don't know what all of you are hearing, but pretty consistently when I knock doors, when I'm out at parades, when I'm in community events, I hear about crime on the increase, particularly the farther south in the county we get. This is a high priority for constituents. It's certainly, as we indicate on your committee report, safe and secure community is our highest priority, Sheriff's Department specifically. So I think it's worthwhile to put it on a referendum. $3.6 million is a lot of money. We don't take increasing the size of government lightly, and that's what this is. Approximately a 15, maybe a little less now than a 15% increase in staffing in the Sheriff's Department. Just under a 10% increase in the property tax levy. But that being said, because of that, we feel like going to the people is the way to go. I'll end with this. The county board has the ability to do this without going to referendum. It would take a lot of work on the budget team's behalf, on the finance team's behalf to create, to do some managing of revenues to make it possible, but it is possible. We have levy flexibility, as you read in the resolution. Because we have been very conservative, not taking the full amount of levy that we're allowed to take, we could do some things there. In addition, because we have not created new debt levy when we have created debt, both with the radio system as well as in previous borrowings with funding the Transportation 2050 plan, you have some flexibility there that you could raise taxes, create new revenue. So you have the ability as a board to do this. But I'll say what I said just a few minutes ago. I think this is such a big thing. And I think growing the size of government is just something we don't do in Washington County, that I think it's important to take it to the people of Washington County. If they want to increase the tax levy, they should have the ability to do that. If they want to increase the tax rate on themselves, whether it's 5 cents a thousand or 25 days from now, we find out it's 2 cents a thousand. I don't think it matters. Principally, I think they should have the choice to be able to do that or not. So with that, from an executive perspective, I think that's why we wanted to come in front of you today, why we think it's important to be on the November ballot, and turn it over to the sheriff to go through any of the specific details of what this means for his office.
So I just wanted to reiterate and say publicly that the staffing models that we came up with is really based on a minimum staffing that we believe is needed to properly service the citizens of Washington County. As the county executive mentioned, a lot of those minimum staffing models really haven't changed in quite some time and probably have not kept up with the growth of the county itself. The aspect of you'll see some of the changes. We eliminated some of the administrative positions based on when we talked to you first. And I'm not saying that those administrative positions aren't important. I think they are, but we really wanted to focus, if it's going to go to referendum and we're stressing the public safety aspect of it, we really wanted to focus on the boots on the ground of public safety personnel servicing the citizens of Washington County. So that's why you'll see a slight change in that. Other than that program assistant that I mentioned for the jail, we really think that's important. But I'm open to answering any questions. What I will tell you is that I'm not prepared right now, but by the full county board, what I'd like to be able to give you is a lot more stats of comparable counties, of response times from the sheriff's office, of out of county bookings that our jail is dealing with, and the increase in that factor, and how the crime is being not all the crime is being committed by county residents. So I hope by the county board you'll have much more of the data driven information.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, just two things as you're considering this public policy decision. First, the public policy decision is not should we increase taxes $3.6 million. Public policy question is should we put this on a referendum or not? So we're not asking you to increase taxes. We're asking you to ask the constituents if they want to do that. I know it seems like maybe a nuance, but it's an important nuance. A couple other items that I think are worth mentioning, because it's been in the press and we've talked to you about it. Our range at the beginning was $3.5 to $5 million. We tried hard to be closer to the lower end as we worked our way through to be as fiscally responsible as we could be. You'll note that a number of things were pulled out of the referendum to get there. We felt like it was really important to try to just do a needs-based referendum as best we could. Can we survive without the referendum? Yes, obviously. I think we're doing a great job of reacting to situations, many of which are listed on your committee report. But the need of being proactive, I think, is important. And so we tried to get what we need without exceeding what we need as best as we possibly could. And then I think it's worth reiterating what's in the committee report in terms of what exactly it is you're looking at. A 9.9% increase in the levy, roughly a 15% increase in the sheriff's office staffing, and a 5 cent per thousand increase in the tax rate are all potentials if this is approved. I'll put that in contrast to the things that have happened over the last 8 years since I've been with the county, both as county administrator and county executive. The tax levy has been decreased 3 times in that 8 years, totaling $1.75 million. It has increased other times as well, but almost nowhere in the state do you see tax levy decreases. We've done it 3 times. The tax rate has dropped 80 cents since I first got to the county. And the total number of staffing county-wide has dropped 52 positions, if I remember right, but it's just under 8%. Even if all of this is approved, we still have reduced the tax rate pretty significantly. We've reduced the number of staff still over that 8 years. The tax levy will be the one thing that has gone up. So I think it's important to put in context over really the last decade what has happened. This is certainly a big increase. I wouldn't say out loud publicly that this is an increase in the size of government, other than it is. I mean, it's inarguable, but that's exactly why we feel like going to the public is important. Though all of that data I think is very relevant. You know, we're very much a smaller government, lower taxes county. I think both the sheriff and I as elected officials ran on that platform or certainly represent that principally. there's a time and a place to spend money, and we think this is one of those worth considering for the community.
And I'm going to start out. I want to ask a quick question to clarify some information I saw in the news media that I think was wrong. I could not find this anywhere in the packet, but this news media outlet said that part of this is going to a curriculum development position that we already had 9 applicants for, and a community relations position that we already had 10 applicants for. I couldn't find anything related to that in the packet. Did she just make an error there? Or, I mean, let's just clarify, that's not part of this proposal, correct?
That is not part of this proposal at all. It's
Yeah.
purely public safety.
So that must be a journalistic error on the part of that individual. So, yep, all right, wanted to clarify that. Let's go ahead and see what questions people have. Go ahead,
I'll
Chairman
just make a
Schleif.
comment. I've been part of this decision-making process all along. I've seen all the back and forth. I've seen where the cuts are. There's been
And
a
you're
lot of
from
work.
Germantown, so,
That's significant.
yep,
But there's been a lot of work put into this, and I fully support going to referendum. I would support it if the county board just chose to do it, because it's high time. When you look at the population growth in the 30 years, we're talking about having the same patrol strength is, I don't know, what's the word, silly?
And I
You've
don't
done
want
a great job getting by with,
yep.
Thank you, but I don't want to mislead the public at all. Our agency has grown over time, but it's just not the patrol level staffing hasn't. We now have court services that we're taking care of. We have some contract policing. We've added through this committee, we've added 1 or 2 positions up in our detective bureau. It's very, very important. So I don't want to give the fallacy that we haven't grown, but our direct boots on the ground patrol has not.
Yeah, and the growth you've had is small scale growth compared to this. You know, you talk about adding 1 or 2 investigators. This is adding 30 positions.
Correct. It'd probably be the largest increase in the sheriff's office.
Yeah,
and in the 6+ years that Supervisor Bossert and I have been on the county board, there have been those detectives. There have been times when you added those people and there was always a lot of discussion and it was never done lightly. And your work has supported that they were all good decisions.
And we always internally look at what we can create efficiencies. We've actually reduced our administrative staff considerably over at least the past, since 2007, I was administrative lieutenant. So we've actually shrunk some of our staff and then asked for, increases where we thought was necessary. And this is really one of those times where we want to let the people decide.
so, Chairman Schleif lives in Germantown. They see, within our county, they see the most impact of Milwaukee crime coming up here. I work in Milwaukee County. I drive through areas of Milwaukee County every day to get to work. I see it myself. Apparently somewhere the law changed where Silver Spring Drive, the bicycle lane, is no longer for bicycles. Now it's a high-speed car passing lane. So, if you don't like that the cars in front of you are only going 15 over the speed limit, you jump in the bicycle lane and fly past them. That's the mentality in Milwaukee. It is starting to filter up even in the West Bend. I saw a video somebody posted online last week of somebody blowing right through a stop sign 2 blocks away from my house at Decorah and 18th. Just didn't even slow down, blew through a stop sign at 40 miles an hour. So that crime is coming this way. It's going to keep coming this way. I think we need to adjust with the times. So I'm hopeful that when this goes to the public, that they see that same need. I have a feeling people in Germantown are much more likely to vote for it than people maybe in Farmington who haven't seen that impact yet. But hopefully the people in Farmington will recognize that this is a legitimate problem that's coming our way that we need to be on top of. So.
And those rural areas, Farmington,
Yeah.
or even Richfield, they rely on the sheriff's department for the only police protection they have, so.
Yeah,
Town of Polk.
yep. Yeah, Town of Polk probably is already starting to see some of the Milwaukee crime issues. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah, I do have some questions. You did answer some of them, thank you. And, when you first, met with us and proposed this to us, it was shared to the administrative needs. And when we got a tour of the jail, to how the deputies are used, for, answering phones and paperwork, and they're not getting, their 30-minute breaks. They're not, getting lunch breaks. So I do have a little bit of a concern, did we actually maybe cut too much of that ancillary type of staff? So, the deputies can truly fully do their job, because a big part of this is for them, as a nurse, I say function to your full scope of practice. And we want them to be able to completely function to their full scope of practice, essentially, to do their duties. But so I'm just a little concerned of that balance. Did we take, too much of that more ancillary staff away? But
you're thinking like administrative staff?
yeah, administrative
Yeah.
or whatever the verbiage you use, yeah.
The administrative staff that we asked for specifically in the jail, that's what I put back in. So I decided that I spoke with our command staff over in the jail and thought that because of that very reason, the administrative staff is probably more important than adding the extra lieutenant. It's actually cost savings. And additionally, a big part of this discussion is kind of in the background, but the mental, if we're able to partner with human services for some of the mental health stuff, that actually alleviates quite a bit of the administrative work on our staff with our current MAT program, medication assisted treatment program, where human services would take over a lot of that, doing that administrative work, that would really free up a lot of the time for our correctional officer staff.
Okay.
And if you took the jail tour, you'll see it's a kind of an odd working environment where even on your break, you're still at your station. Bathrooms aren't necessarily right there, so we have to do shifting of personnel. But the increase in the staffing of those types of things would allow us a little more flexibility for the staff.
Okay. Yeah, because what you were just speaking of there too, the jail mental health, it says NA under FTE, but then 2023 it has 100,000. So is that in partnership with Health and Human Services, or how come it's a
Sure. So
NA FTE but yet 100,000?
So the backstory with the mental health is that we currently contract with a private entity for up to 40 hours a week, and I think we're actually getting quite a deal on it. It was I think like $74,000 a year. That contract is ending. The provider decided to go in a different direction. So now we're looking at our current jail health account to pick up that. And the cost for that same 80 hours went from 74,000, and I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was in the neighborhood of like 163,000. So that's why we decided that there's actually a lot of benefits for us to partner with Human Services. So I think we actually have a meeting with them this week to discuss that possibility. But so the FTEs wouldn't be created, the FTE wouldn't be created in the sheriff's office budget. Human service employee.
All right. And yeah, just to, a concern of mine is, really the lack of details at this point to make an informed decision. But you said that you're going to bring some stats forward in time for the county board.
That's my hope, is that I plan on that because so like I said, what this model is based on is not really based on those stats, but the stats will help justify it. The model here is a minimum staffing where I believe, I'll give you a very good example is on the 4th of July, a holiday when everyone was off. We had 5 deputies working that day, and that just is not enough. And we can backfill it with overtime, but
That's
these other budget issues. So if you can imagine, you mentioned the town of Polk that has a hospital in it now. It used to never have a hospital in it. That consumes a huge amount of our time. And when we're there, we have 2 deputies there. Well, you start doing the math. Take 2 away from 5, and you have 3 deputies covering the county. That's where my concern is that, and we rely on mutual aid and mutual assistance from our partners, and we provide assistance to them. But you can only do that so much.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you. To another question, the vehicles. When we had met, you had spoken to one of the positives of the response to the Slinger Middle School incident was essentially all these deputies were ready to hop in vehicles because they were at a training event. And thus we had this, amazing fast response to Slinger Middle School. So I'm a little concerned with how, that's one of the rationales for this too, is to be able to respond to a potential event like that. And a key factor, in that positive response was those deputies able to quick hop in their car and go. But I don't see that included in here. You said that you took this vehicle cost out, or how are we going to address that?
We'll let the county executive address that.
Okay.
Yeah, so what that boils down to is a one-time expense, and we don't need a referendum for a one-time expense.
If that doesn't need to be included in
It
here?
doesn't. We can do either a general fund transfer or, wait till the end of a sales tax year. And if we have a surplus, use some of those dollars. One thing to understand is, if we add 30 or 40 squad cars, it's going to take us 2 or 3 years maybe to get that many squads. So we can stage that expense over time.
Okay.
And it's one time and it's over. And we actually think it's going to cost the same or less. Once you get all the squads in place, then you put them on a rotation and it becomes more of an operational expense. It'll cost the same or less than we're currently spending on half the amount of squad cars because you're keeping them over a longer period of time. So we have the ability, you have the ability to fund that today, although it would take a little while. There's no reason to go to referendum for that.
Okay.
This is more about the ongoing increased expense of really bolstering the sheriff's staffing levels in a number of areas. And that's where we feel like you really got to go, in our opinion, you really got to go to the people to increase the size of government in that way.
And to kind of illustrate that squad replacement, you certainly wouldn't want to buy 40 squads today, and then 7 years from now, they're all due for replacement. So we want to stagger that out.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, and then this proposal too, it's this 3.6 times 3 years. It's 3.6 million.
It will not, if it gets approved,
It's forever.
it's forever.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, but I mean, these, basically, as you noted, most of what you're approving is salaries. So short of eliminating the positions, you'll just continue to fund them. It does create a little bit of a challenge down the road, and in full disclosure, it'll take us a little while to hire these folks, but let's say 2 years from now, we have 3.6 million and all of these positions and contracts and whatever else are full. The increase, or the cost to continue, as I've called it, is going to be above net new construction. And we're still going to have the gap problem. It'll just be a little bigger gap problem. But that's the least of our concerns. We've been able to manage that for the last 8 years. This is about, do we want to increase for this specific reason or don't we? We can address the ongoing in the future.
Okay. All right, and then you said too, other funds, we have the ability to do this without a referendum, that the levy has some flexibility. So why then choose, just to have this on public record, why choose the referendum then versus other options, or what about our ARPA funds, or,
Yeah.
Sure. So our
I think
ARPA
that's been
funds,
covered, but
we
yeah.
certainly can do that. Again, it's a one-time revenue source.
versus the 3.6 that we need to sustain.
Right. We could probably swing that for 2 years.
Okay.
Maybe 3. And then you're out of money and now you got to figure out how, you got to figure out how you're going to increase your salary to be able to pay for the mortgage you just took on. That is one method. The method that I was referring to earlier is, as is indicated in the resolution, lines 19 through 21 is really where to focus your attention. We have not taken the full amount of authorized levy that we have been allowed to. So we could increase the property tax levy 3.6%. As you can see from the referendum language, that's still not enough. There's other areas that you could also tap into. So when we borrowed money for the Transportation 2050 plan, we borrowed approximately $11 million, I think. 12 million maybe? Somewhere in that range. The annual principal and interest cost is 1.9 million. We're allowed by law to create a new separate levy called a debt levy to fund that 1.9 million per year. We didn't do that. We lived within our means. We used their existing operating levy. We could shift that over to debt levy, freeing up 1.9 million plus the 3.6%. In addition to that, when we just did the radio system borrowing, that's another 1.1 million, I think, somewhere close to that. We could do the same exercise. So we have the flexibility. It's not like you can't do it. What I get nervous about is if you start doing the math, you're pretty close to 3.6 million when you add up the 3.6% increase plus those two debt pockets, if you will. And then you've taken basically you've robbed every pocket you've got in levy flexibility, and any idea that you come up with for increasing funding to the roads or putting some additional funding into the mental health area, substance use or something like that, you don't have anywhere to go anymore.
Yeah, I'm concerned about Samaritan. Yeah.
Samaritan's a whole nother ball of wax. Are you going to use levy money or are you not going to use levy money? Probably a different agenda item before Mike yells at us. But the bottom line is you have flexibility in your levy. If you choose to do this, you absolutely can do it. You will be making a decision to increase the levy by 10% without going to the electorate, which I think is a bad idea. You'll be making a decision to increase staffing in the sheriff's department by almost 15% without the electorate. I think that's a bad idea, but you can do it. Like full disclosure from the beginning, I've never said you don't have the ability. We don't have the ability as an organization to do this. We do. You can do it.
But I like the idea of going to the electorate. We have smart voters in our county. We probably have a lot of voters who are watching this. They're seeing this discussion, they're understanding this issues. They see the crime problem that's filtering up from Milwaukee. I think this is going to have wide support from the voters, and I hope it will. But we have smart voters that can make that decision of, do we want to increase our ability to deal with crime coming up from Milwaukee, or don't we? And
Yeah, and to help them to make a better, more informed decision is the statistics too that Sheriff Schulteis spoke of to share with them, to share with the county board, to make sure that we're all making that informed decision. But I am too concerned, how does this affect potential Samaritan funding or other things that, Samaritan is.
And I'm going to caution, we want to be careful not to make this a Samaritan discussion, but we do need
other things that are important too. And that's, we haven't gone to referendum for that need in our county. It's been an identified need for so many years.
So we do need to speak to how this could impact that, but we can't make this a Samaritan discussion. So,
It highlights though, and something I talked about at town hall meetings. After we met with you, I went to each area of the county and gave an opportunity for all 700 plus employees to come and talk to us about this referendum coming, because I knew it would be a big headline, and if it goes to referendum, it's gonna, as I said to them, suck the air out of the room. This will be the number one conversation. But as I indicated to them, just like all of our decisions, heavy decisions that we made in the last 8 years, we're very priority based in our decision making, not just in budgeting. It's not that Samaritan isn't a priority, it absolutely is a priority. Safe and secure community and the sheriff's office are just our number one priority. So when we see an area that needs to be addressed, and as is indicated in the committee report, as I've told you, as has been in the press, there's been enough incidents in the last 3 years that this is something we feel like needs to be talked about. It's going to come to the top. Samaritan's going to be addressed. We'll still be working on it. We literally had a meeting yesterday about it. And we'll continue to have those discussions. You're not going to probably see it in the headlines for the next 3 months if this goes to referendum, but it will continue to be a conversation. This is our number one priority right now. There's other priorities that are not number one because of that, not just Samaritan. So I feel it's important. That's an important part of the conversation to acknowledge that we need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We can handle more than one conversation, whether it's Samaritan or next generation housing or mental health and substance abuse issues that Human Services is dealing with. But this is certainly our number one priority. And constituents have made that clear to me. The safe and secure, really the Sheriff's Department in particular is their highest priority right now.
Yep.
Elections might be somewhere close behind.
I want to take a moment. Supervisor Conrath mentioned the jail tour we did last week. I want to take a moment and thank everybody for going on that tour. I think it gave us a chance to see what our current jail staff does every day, the scope of that operation, and why there's a need for a couple more people on every shift. When you start looking at the different duty stations, and then you start looking at how many people are left then to go and respond to different parts of the jail, or to deliver meals, or to transport prisoners to court, or transport prisoners when they have an attorney there to visit with them. There's definitely a need for that component too, to improve jail staffing so that can run more effectively and we can keep that as safe of an environment as we can keep that. So I want to thank all the supervisors who attended, which was every member of this committee. So thanks for being there for that. I like the idea of giving the voters a choice. As I said, we have smart voters in this county. Josh spoke about the levy impact. Out of the packet, I think it's 5 cents per $1,000 of home value is what the county tax levy would go up for 23. And then with 2024, due to the growth in equalized value, it will come back down to actually below what it is in 2022.
We believe that, yes.
Yeah. So it really, from a tax impact point, is just a 1 year small hit. But we are foregoing savings we otherwise would have, and instead investing those savings and making sure we have a safe community. Sheriff Schulteis mentioned the 4th of July. We've seen within a 3 or 4 hour driving distance of us over the last 8 months, 2 different major incidents at parades, one in Waukesha and one in Highland Park. Does this give us any extra ability to support safety for parades and other mass events like that?
Yeah, so we routinely help other municipalities, and like I said, it's a two-way street. They certainly help us.
Yeah.
The difference is a lot of time, like one of the last parades in the city of West Bend, we were asked to help with some of the security issues, and that was really fairly recently after the Waukesha incident.
Yeah.
So we staffed it, but it was all in overtime. So we did it, and I think that one parade was about $7,000 in overtime that we expelled, but it's to assist another municipality. And that's another important point with this referendum as well, is that it really directly affects every county resident. It doesn't matter if you live in the village of Richfield or Germantown or up in Farmington. The jail operation specifically services the entire county, no doubt about that. And even the sheriff's office, although it's a patrol division, and we have specific areas where we're the primary responders. I'm committed to making sure that we are available, and even more so to assist the local municipalities with their needs.
Yeah, and this gives us a greater depth for that assistance. I think it was in the packet about Germantown back in 2020 when we had the Joseph Mensa protests. The chief of police for Wauwatosa lived in Germantown. There was an attempt to establish permanent protesting in Germantown, and that was very quickly dealt with, where the protesters had the right to do a one-day protest, but they weren't able to establish daily protests like they were in Wauwatosa. And our sheriff's department was part of the mutual aid response in helping with that. So that's appreciated as well. One thing I want to be careful of, I don't think this would happen or be our intent at all, but I don't want down the road to shift dollars away from public safety where this becomes, where public safety is the window dressing to get the referendum approved. And then all of a sudden, some of that money or some money that's currently being spent on public safety is instead being spent on something else, roads or human services or, so we're going to have to watch the public safety budgets and make sure that money's not being shifted out of them later. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the intent is for all of this money to stay with public safety and make sure that we have, as best as we can, a crime-free, safe community. But that's part of why we're getting this growth. People are coming here because we are a lot safer than Milwaukee.
Yeah, just to be clear, from a practical standpoint, not only is that not probable, it's almost not possible. The cost continues for the sheriff's department. Just the annual increases of wages, health insurance, utilities, filling those squad cars with gas.
Everything.
All of that goes up about $750,000 a year. Our net new construction, the total amount we can increase the levy, almost never gets that high. So every year we're putting almost all of our net new construction into the sheriff's department. Kind of, as I explained in the committee report, kind of keep them whole all the time. And then it's how do we fund everything else? When I say the sheriff's office, safe and secure community is our number one priority, I think there's no better way to show that than we put our money where our mouth is. That's the first spot that gets funded, generally speaking. And the sheriff has done things to try and mitigate that as best as possible, like a number of those administrative positions going away or looking at other ways to maybe have cheaper costs on things. But bottom line is it just costs money to do business. And as you can see, even from the referendum, the bulk of the cost of doing business for the sheriff's office is people. It takes boots on the ground to do the work, whether it's in the jail or communications or detective bureau or patrol. It's human beings and it takes wages and health insurance and all the other things to support them. One thing, if I might, Mr. Chairman, following up on your comments, I think it's important to understand the tax rate impact. You were mentioning the tax rate. This is a slide. I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but I think it does the job. This is from 2004 to present. If you blow it up on the screen, it basically is a line from 2004 to current. That's like this. This one only shows through 2019, which was stopped at $2.39. Today it's $2.06. So from literally, in under 20 years, we will have dropped from 344 to 206 currently. What is that? $1.38, over a third.
And we're asking for a 1 year increase of 5 cents.
Right. So what you're going to see when we create the graph, and Aaron will create the graph. What this looks like.
Aaron, did you get that job assignment?
When you get the graph for what this will look like, you're going to see this downward trajectory here, and it's going to flip 1 year and immediately start to drop again. And the reason we know that is the way that equalized values work. So the current equalized value that we're waiting on for 2 more weeks is a look back to January of this year, which really is the home sales from last year. Oh. So it takes 18 months. So all that ridiculous 15 offers, no contingencies, cash, Yeah, all of that happened in 2021. We're gonna see it for the first time this August, which doesn't apply until December's tax bills. Which means much of that is still happening. While you were talking, I was about a different item. I was reading the home sales in Washington County. They're still like that. In 2022, you won't feel that until December of 2023. So we have full confidence that the next 2 and probably 3 tax bills, budgets, we're going to continue to see equalized values skyrocketing. Even if we hit a recession, it takes a solid 3 or 4 years to us finally see equalized values dip if they dip. That said, we believe we have 3 TIF districts closing, which means equalized values shoot up. Now, even if only one of those closed, last year we had 0, I think, right? So, and last year we saw an equalized value increase of 7%. We anticipate it could be as high as 9%. We've seen double digits in the past, pre-Great Recession, but it's possible. So the number, when we say 5 cents per thousand increase, we're trying to be conservative with that number. It's possible it's 6 cents. It's maybe more probable it's 2 or maybe flat. But at the end of the day, I don't lead with that, because the bottom line is you're increasing the levy by 9.9%. You're growing government inarguably, 30 positions. I think we need to be as transparent as possible with taxpayers. This is a big increase, even if at the end your tax rate is essentially the same or over time has dropped substantially. So that's all the same kind of data that we'll give people. There's a lot of, fiscal hawks who are going to be worried about what happens to, I can't afford to pay anything more. The day that the press ran the story, I was getting text messages about my We Energies bill just went up $600. I can't afford another tax increase, period. So we need to be able to speak to that. And that's a big deal. And I think that's part of why it's really important that taxpayers are making this decision and not the county board. Because that's legit, especially with inflation doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
Sure, Buster. I don't know if I.
Let's go with you and then Supervisor. Oh, okay. Let's go with Supervisor Toma then.
I have one question before. I was fortunate enough last night to meet an off-duty officer, which I think is rare. Are overtime hours, is that mandatory, or do they sign up for that?
It's a little bit of both. If you're working at the time, it's not uncommon that we have to either hold you over, have you come in early for 4 hours on either side of your shift. We really try not to order people in on off days. If they want to work voluntarily on off days, they can do that. But with our staffing levels, when it gets low like that, there's a lot more of that hold over and call in early, and there is a certain amount of burnout that I'm a little concerned about.
Well, that was my concern talking to this officer last night. I used to run my business, and the longer you run overtime, the less productive my people were. And and the thing is, they get burned out, and I don't want to see that. The other thing that we discussed last night was that their salary. They can go to surrounding areas and get more. Why do you need to burn yourself out here when you can go someplace else, make more, and chances are they don't have to work all that overtime. So that was one of my main concerns. I also went on the jail tour, and I see the shortage there. I can't imagine where you have to be afraid to turn your back and nobody else is there to help you. It's just where even the simple thing is going to the bathroom. You got to get somebody to come in and fill in for you. I don't think that should be. I'm in favor of putting this to referendum. Let the people decide. I'd love to see the public do a jail tour, because that'll open up their eyes. It's just,
The White House.
I think that's one where we got to ask the public to trust us, having gone on the jail tour. So.
and the respond time. I mean, I could only, I mean, another thing that shocked me was there was 5 officers last night for 450 square miles? Is it,
I think it's like 436 or 432, but that counts the square mileage or square miles of municipalities too, but the entire county is that.
but I mean, just visualize what that must be. So when you get these calls, how can you respond to them? I mean, by the time you've got so many other calls that have come in, it's just, so again, I'm for putting this on as a referendum.
Yeah, and just,
Let's go to Supervisor Gaddis real quick. He's been waiting patiently, and then we'll come back.
Thank you, Chair Bosser. I agree also with bringing it to the voters referendum. Looking forward to more data, as Marty, you indicated, because quite frankly, I don't like to make decisions on emotion. What is our crime rate? What is our incident rate for violent crimes? What is our incident rate for property crime in this county versus others, in this state versus others? You know, you can quick Google and see some of that. You know, what is a good national median average for per capita officer, sworn or civilian rate, so we get a sense, are we appropriately staffed or are we inappropriately staffed? You know, so that's where my head is at, and I would imagine the fiscal hawks that Executive Showman mentioned, they're going to be asking those questions, or I would. I hope all of you would. It doesn't mean that I'm not in favor of it, but I need more data to be able to support the problem statement, if that makes sense. So yes, I would hope that we can get some of that data. You know, what is that, you know, crime prevention plan entail? Is that going to be stop and frisk? Is that going to be, you know, what does that entail if it's also anti-crime prevention? So that's going through my mind as well, as how will that assist with preventing crime versus being responsive? And the jail side, you know, I think the comments, I agree with that. I think Sheriff Schultes, you had mentioned that there's a shift in administrative staff. In leadership staff. I think there was a lieutenant and a sergeant for 6 people. That just seems excessive leadership for 6 people, 2 leaders, unless I'm mistaken there.
So it's based on a platoon system. So there's days that there's only 1 supervisor working. There can be days where there's some overlap. But the staff 24/7 supervision, you need to add, there's going to be some overlap.
Got it. Well, so those are things that I think some people are going to ask. Really, you need 2 supervisors for 6 people. You know, so do we have the data for citizenry, electorate to make that informed decision? So that's what's sticking in my mind, is what is the data that supports each of those. I think you spelled out clearly the purchase of squad cars and the ability for ongoing maintenance and lower cost, as well as response times. You know, what are response times? What are our incident rates per capita per officer today? And is that healthy to the point about being overworked or stressed? And then the one other comment that was mentioned by Supervisor Conrath, and I think Sheriff Schultes, was, where does that mental health person sit? And I equate this to or an analogy in software development is you have a role called a Scrum Master. Well, you don't have a Scrum Master reporting to a software engineer manager because they're disparate functions and duties. So is it appropriate to have a social worker mental health report to law enforcement, or should they be reporting through Health and Human Services, because now they also have the ability to be with their peers and they can learn from one another and potentially even share services if need be. So those are just a couple things that run through my head that we shouldn't be getting into the infinite details about, administrative functions, but that's just something that came to the top of my head as well. So thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts. Again, I look forward to the data Because I know a couple constituents already have said, yeah, what problem are we solving for?
Okay, I think Supervisor, actually, did you have your hand up before too?
Let her go first.
Okay, all right.
You're just speaking of statistics too, and to help make an informed decision. With being a nurse, I'm well aware of when an individual needs to come to the emergency department or even, sitting in the hospital bed and you have to have a sheriff at the end of that bed or two of them while they're in the emergency department, correct? Maybe some stats on the time of that and how often that occurs to help your cause, and that's increasing. I'm aware that that's increasing. And also being a nurse, what I see as a gap, and with just quick chit chatting with the RNs that do work, is there a need to add another RN within the jail? Are we meeting the health need? Because I know that's a statewide issue. Is usually RNs are understaffed in jails, and there's a lot of medical emergencies that are treated, in an untimely manner and result in very poor outcomes. So, I'm concerned that hasn't been addressed, or if you could maybe look into that for us too. Are we doing okay with that? Do we have any statistics on, delayed care where the individual then maybe had to go to the emergency department? It could have been prevented if the RN staffing ratio would have been better. Because, that's litigation issues and concerns too that we want to be proactive and try and prevent.
Yeah, we currently contract with a healthcare provider for 128 hours of medical care per week with 24/7 availability to a doctor. And and those costs have obviously been going up and up and up as well, but it is absolutely important, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but in physically the jail, the staffing for a nurse, do you keep a nurse 24/7 within the jail, or?
It's not 24/7. It's there's a couple of nurses that are assigned there, but it's 128 hours per week.
Okay. All right. And just a comment too on, you said, you're contracted with a physician, an MD. Have you explored a nurse practitioner to potentially contract with?
That I'm not sure. We used to have a model that we had a county nurse. And
Yes.
that actually exposed the county
It's
to
an old classmate of mine.
a little more liability. Now we can kind of shift that liability over to a healthcare provider. So I guess I can't speak to that aspect of it.
Yeah, and nurse practitioner, it's one of the 4 advanced practice nurse roles. I'm an advanced practice nurse too, a clinical nurse specialist, and we can have prescriptive authority. So just maybe potentially something to explore.
And one thing to know is we've got the planning team, which consists of Aaron Dahl, Todd Scott, Dave Barber, and Matt Furno, kind of going through a exercise of trying to poke holes and ask questions like you're asking. Of course, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, but we'll do our best to try and get the questions answered that you're asking, as well as think about what other questions might be on people's minds, and put together a frequently asked questions list that will continue to update throughout this process if we do go to referendum.
All right, Chairman Schleif.
We've kind of got off the path here because we're all trying to poke holes, and we're just voting now to go to referendum. And if we go to referendum, all this data is going to have to be gathered. The Sheriff's Department has an excellent Facebook page, gets a lot of hits. There's a lot of information there. And I'm sure we'll use all our channels to get all this data out, because we will have to convince the voters if they're not already convinced. And all that goes to quality of life in Washington County. It's not an accident that the police chief from Wauwatosa lives in Washington County. I think he's retired now, but bear in mind. So,
Yeah. One thing I would say though is our role really isn't to convince the public, but I think if we give them the information, the public will see the need.
That's why we're poking holes, to make sure that an informed decision is made.
Chair Bosser, one last question or comment. So to the point about the action here today, so if I'm looking at the question, and in full transparency, as Executive Showman had said, this is, forever. Line 14 says, shall Washington County be allowed to exceed this limit and increase the levy for the next fiscal year 2023? That could be implied by many that it's only for 1 year.
I think that's legal verbiage that they have to use, but I get, yeah.
I'm saying in full transparency, if someone reads that, they're like, oh, that's only 1 year.
Yeah, we'll have to look at the statutory language and make sure we didn't miss any additions, or, because it does, we want to make clear whether it's through the question or through the explanation that it is perpetual.
Yeah, I was going to point that out.
Can I also just speak to your commentary about, we won't advocate? So you've seen referendums in the past, whether it's school districts or others. One thing to know about this referendum as presented is it's a binding referendum, meaning if the voters vote either way, we're bound to execute that. So that's one component to understand. The second component is when you do see others, there's a stark line between advocating for a yes or no vote and putting out information and data and frequently asked questions and that kind of information. From the official side, when you see the sheriff in his badge and myself with the logo on, it's everything that you just described about we're not advocating, we're simply telling people, here's the facts, Jack, here's what the referendum will do, here's the number of positions, et cetera. That's not to say in a campaign capacity, as friends of Josh Shulman or Schulteis for sheriff or yourselves in your campaign capacity can't advocate what you feel the voter should do. That you can and maybe should do that. And certainly there will be a component of that, but they are very, very separate. The county government, Washington County organization will not advocate one way or another, vote yes or vote no. We'll just put out the information. It's why we rely on the planning team to do the bulk of the research and the data and the frequently asked questions and the writing the resolution. So it's not candidacy or campaign related or anything like that. But those are two different worlds, and there will be an advocacy component that has nothing to do with county government.
Yeah. So in other words, when we're out in the community, if we're at clearly a campaign event, we're welcome to advocate our opinions as we see fit.
Yes, and my suggestion is to make it clear that you're speaking as the elected representative campaign side, not, I'm not standing here as an employee or anything on behalf of the organization. This is me as a person, as an individual, as a voter, just like you.
Yep. Okay, so I think we've had enough discussion at this point, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of passing this on to the county board and approving this potential referendum signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, and so the motion passes. This will go to the full county board then for the August county board meeting. Next action item is to designate grant eligible public safety answering point for Washington County. Need a motion to approve that? Supervisor Conrath, second? Supervisor Toma? All right, do we have somebody who wants to speak to that?
Sure, I can do that.
Yep.
So I think
The mics don't work.
What's that?
The mics don't work.
Oh, they don't work. I thought Josh was trying to shut me up before. I think the Public Safety Committee is pretty well aware of Next Generation 911, but just to give you a quick 30,000 foot overview, the state of Wisconsin is moving away from digital analog lines for 911 and moving towards SENet, it's called. It's That's a digital internet protocol. In fact, SENet stands for Emergency Services Internet Protocol. One of the things that is required of that is an upgrade to infrastructure, both for the 911 system outside of public safety buildings. And I'm going to say, if I say PSAPs, I'm referring to dispatch centers, and then doing upgrades within the dispatch center or the PSAP. Obviously, there's costs involved with that. And so what the state has asked is that they have a grant program, but they're only willing to provide that grant to one dispatch center per county. And in order to be able to get that designation for grants, the full county board and through the public safety committee has to approve a resolution indicating which PSAP is grant eligible within Washington County. So if you read the resolution, we are by far the largest dispatch center within Washington County. We service about 71,000 county residents directly. Back in 2003, there was a county resolution that designated the Washington County Sheriff's Office as the sole 911 wireless PSAP. And the resolution that is in front of you is asking you to support the Sheriff's Office as being the designated PSAP center for that grant application. One thing you should know is that the state of Wisconsin, their subcommittee recommended eligibility criteria for basic training and standards that a PSAP has to have in order to even qualify for that grant. And I'll go through just real quickly. Operates at 24/7 and has a minimum of 2 telecommunicators on duty to receive emergency requests for assistance. So they have to have 2 dispatchers on duty 24/7, no matter what. We are the only dispatch center in Washington County to do that. So automatically, we're really the only dispatch center that even qualifies for this grant, based on the approval of the county board, or designation by the county board. Answers both wireline and wireless 911 calls. We are the only dispatch center in Washington County to do both of those. We transfer 911 calls to other PSAPs. Establish a basic training program that covers so there's all dispatch centers have that. Annual training on continuing operation plans. So if our dispatch center goes down, we have a backup plan. We've established that and our training on that. 9% of the requests for emergency assistance are answered within the 10 seconds, and 95 are answered within 20 seconds. We certainly fall into that standard. And we're below that, or up above that standard, I guess. And within 3 years of the grant application, the dispatch center has to provide emergency medical dispatching. That's saying that if you have to within 3 years, we're already doing that. So we qualify in that area. So really what we're asking of the Public Safety Commission is to forward this resolution to the full county board so that we can apply for the state grants for emergency, the SENet. Rob, is there anything else that I should be adding? And it is a match grant, not I forgot what the ratio is. So there will be some costs involved to the county. However, I think we have 300,000-ish in our capital improvement fund for, I think it's next year or the following year, that we've designated to already offset some of that.
All right, questions?
Just a question. On line 43, it says establish a basic training program. What type of training?
So that is really just the field training program, which every dispatch center has. That ours is anywhere from it could be as soon as 10 weeks, depending if we bring in somebody with experience, up to 15, 17 weeks of on-the-job training, really.
Okay. Yeah, I'm 911 dispatchers, I'm aware, you spoke of burnout. There's, moral distress with those individuals, just like there are with, sheriff's departments and nursing too. But I mean, that's significant is the moral distress and burnout on those individuals. And I am aware too, it was a couple years ago, I went into law, some 911 education that had to be done on dispatchers. So I was just curious,
And I think
the
we might
details
be
of that.
getting off
Am I-
topic of appointing a PSAP for.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, that
Yeah.
the educational aspects are properly covered.
And
For 911 dispatchers.
That,
Yeah.
very confident they are.
Yeah, probably better discussion after the meeting, so, yep.
Okay.
All right, other questions on the topic?
Yeah.
Okay,
I just want to make a comment.
Okay.
I just, because that costs money, that additional education and things. So I want to make sure too, do we have the, the appropriate funds and things?
again,
for
that's, we want to be very careful about sticking to the agenda item, which is about designating a
The grant.
PSAP for Washington County. So that's, not saying those aren't valid questions, but maybe talk with the sheriff offline after the meeting on those. For official meetings, we got to stick to the agenda. So, yeah, but those are good questions.
Would
So,
that not be part of the grant? No.
We're already doing that, he's
Okay.
already said.
Yeah, I'm just hoping it's enough though, because
Yeah.
this line, line 6, whereas any public safety answering point grants received will offset costs that would otherwise fall on the taxpayers. So I just, I don't know the details of all the costs and stuff behind
Yeah.
this, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's answer those questions offline. So.
Okay.
yep. All those in favor of designating the county dispatch center as the official PSAP for Washington County signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. That's our last agenda item. So our next meeting will be August 17th, 2022 at 7:30, and we stand adjourned.